Hi everyone, I welcome you all to this module. As you know that in the previous class we already talked about Bacon's essay of studies, but today we are going to talk about his another essay of judicature. So let's start with the introduction part. As you know that Francis Bacon, the father of English essay, occupies a distinguished position in English literature as an essayist and a pioneer of modern science. You see, his essays are treasure house of worldly wisdom. If you just go through the essay, you will come to know that he wrote widely on politics, philosophy, and science. They portray his intellect and practical wisdom. They have gripping plots and hidden truth of practical life. They are loaded with wisdom of experience and observation conveyed through short, compact, and terse sentences. The essays have become classics of English language because of their inevitable style and fine literary touch. So you'll find, his different style and literary touch in the essay. The essays present all aspects of human life. I mean, if you just go through the all the essays of Bacon, you will come to know that it covers all aspects of human life. They cover topics from the purely intellectual of truth, religion, beauty, to the practical or human interests like, friendship, honor, marriage. They are the pearls of in the garden of literature. An average reader of Bacon may confine on some essays, but an eminent scholar studies and digests all the essay of Bacon. So here I am going to talk about the role of Bacon in English literature, his presentation of moral principles, use of his style, and inductive approach in the essay. You see, his style and personality can be analyzed at three levels: greatness, style, and the use of language. So let's start with the greatness. As a philosopher, historian, or top government official, you see, Francis Bacon was a versatile genius, attorney, philosopher, historian, champion of modern science, and a top government official. He used to write a terse epigrammatic prose, which is no doubt well structured and prescriptive. His style or his prose is very logical and illustrative. You see, in his prose, you will find practical wisdom, and he addressed his readers in an oracular voice. In his essays, Bacon has made use of Latin and Greek quotations also. He had comprehensive knowledge of the classics. Many of his observations have become proverbial expressions in the English language. You see, he also imported a new sense of precision and clarity in English prose. Talking about his style, as you can see on the screen, simplicity, lucidity, and flexibility. I mean, there's no doubt that his style is very simple, lucid, and flexible. Simplicity, lucidity, and flexibility are the keynotes of his style. You can say like this. In his essays, there are elevated themes such as justice and truth, and trifling themes as gardens, buildings, etc. In fact, Bacon's essays are the treasure house of worldly wisdom. As an essayist, Bacon's fame rests in his prose style that has been variously estimated as Addison praises his grace, Sainsbury admires his dazzling power of rhetoric, Hume calls him rather stiff and rigid. Yes, students, let's try to move into the next part where Francis Bacon was also known as wisest, brightest, and meanest. Once Alexander Pope said, if parts allure these things, how Bacon shinned the wisest, brightest, and meanest of mankind. Just try to analyze what do we mean by all these things. See, from this statement, we can simply say that Bacon was the true child of Renaissance. He was the wisest because of his worldly wisdom. He was brightest because of his powerful intellect and the art of writing terse essays. And he was meanest due to his treacherous character. He was a man of multi talents. His thirst for infinite knowledge and versatility was astonishing. He possessed the intellect of the highest order. He was proficient in Greek, Latin, English, science, philosophy, classics, and other fields of. You can see the greatness of this man. He is regarded as the creator of modern school of experimental research. He says, man is the servant and interpreter of nature. The essays are loaded with the wisdom of experience and observation conveyed through short, compact, and terse sentences. Bacon was indeed an eloquent prophet of new era and the pioneer of modern science. So we can simply say that, it is fair to state that Bacon's essay are a treasure house of worldly wisdom. The term worldly wisdom means a wisdom which is necessary for worldly success. Bacon was a man of high wisdom, as he himself pronounced, I have taken all knowledge to be my province. I repeat, I have taken all knowledge to be my province. His essays are rich with the art which a man should employ for achieving success in his life, such as shrewdness, tact, foresight, judgment of character, and so on. The renowned and marvelous poet Alexander Pope made a wonderful remark on Bacon. He says, the wisest, brightest, and meanest of mankind. Bacon was the wisest because of his worldly wisdom. He was brightest. He was brightest. You see, he was brightest owing to his powerful intellect and the art of writing terse essays, and he was meanest due to his treacherous character. He was truly of Renaissance, the age of accumulating knowledge, wealth, and power. Being a true follower of Machiavellian principle, he led his life for worldly success. He was a man of shrewd and sagacious intellect, with his eyes fixed on the main chance. And what he preached in his essay was also the knowledge needed for worldly success. Now let's talk about the Bacon style of writing. You see, Macaulay says that Bacon had not one but two styles. To illustrate the first style, Macaulay quoted the passage from the essay of studies, as you can see on the screen. Crafty men condemn studies, simple men admire them, and wise men use them. To illustrate Bacon's second style, Macaulay quoted from of adversity. He says, prosperity is not without many fears, distastes, and adversity is not without comforts and hopes. If you just compare these two passages, we form a different opinion. Just compare these two passages, and we can simply say that it reveals a striking change. The style of the first is entirely different from that of the second. In the first passage, there are no connective conjunctions, but Bacon finds room for them in the second. Just see the second one. The later style has warmth, color, and imagination. Here, Hugh Walker differs from Macaulay's. He states that Bacon suited his style to the subject. There's no doubt that the style of the essay of adversity is more ornate than that of essay of studies. But while reading advancement of learning, readers adore his passage too. So the change in his style appears, sometimes unconvincing and unrealistic. Now let's talk about the role of judges and judiciary system. I'm just trying to analyze the essay. You see, the role of judges in the English legal system is to interpret and uphold the law. As you can see, the first point is to interpret and uphold the law as laid down in statutes by Parliament, and to uphold principles of common law such as reasonableness and fairness. You see, judges may apply equitable remedies, which are discretionary remedies available in common law to ensure justice. It is argued that judges also make law in creating legal rules, changing interpretation of a statute, and in light of social and moral changes. Uh, an important aspect of their role is that relating to EC legislation and to the Human Rights Act 1998, incorporating the European Convention on Human Rights. Statutes are to be read in conjunction with EC law, and where a statute directly conflicts, it's now accepted that judges are to apply the EC law. Legislation is to be read in conjunction with the Human Rights Act, and if it conflicts, a judge will need to review whether the derogation is permitted or override the conflicting legislation. Moving on to the next part, you see, if we just elaborate it, we can say that the most senior judges, the law lords, also are involved in the creation of law, as they can seek to influence bills as they pass through parliamentary through the House of Lords. Now just talk about the second part of it. The you can see on the screen, the second part is a further role of the judiciary in the legal system is to review the legality of ministerial action or those made by statutory bodies. In consideration of these roles, the judiciary, although separate and supposedly independent from the other branches of the government, have a varied role to play with both executive and legislative functions. The role of the judges in court is to preside over the proceedings, to ensure that a fair trial is given, and to deliver the verdict at the end of the case. Whereas in civil cases, the situation is quite different. In civil cases, the judge decides upon the outcome of the case. Before the case begins, the judge reads through the case notes so that he is aware of the situation under which the case has been brought about. It is the judge's decision regarding what damages, if any, are to be awarded. Unlike juries or magistrates in a criminal court, the judge will give a reason for his verdict. The level of compensation or the level of compensation is the just decision based upon legislation and previous case. You see, the third point is in criminal case it is the jury or magistrates who decide whether the defendant is guilty or innocent. The judge's role during the case is to ensure that the questioning done by both defense and prosecution is fair and that order is maintained. He also sums up the case to the jury before they make their final decision. This is his responsibility as he is an unbiased party in the case who gives an impartial description of the law to the jury who are presumably lay people as well as reminding them of the facts of the case in the event what they may have forgotten some of the key points. In addition, he also reminds the jury that it's for the defense to prove that the accused is guilty, not that he is innocent. When the jury have delivered a verdict, it's for the judge to pass sentence if a guilty verdict has been given. The judge will use legislation to apply the range of sentences and punishment to the to the weight of the offense. Further, we can also say that judges are impartial and independent and are therefore of central importance to the concept of the rule of law. It is sometimes difficult to see how this independence is maintained. For example, let's take the example of Britain. The judiciary in Britain is appointed on merit and there are safeguards to protect their independence. For example, judicial salaries are not subject to parliamentary voting and are fixed by statute. However, the Lord Chancellor is at the head of the judiciary, being the most senior judge in the English court structure and is appointed by Prime Minister. He's supposed to be apolitical in the way he carries out his functions and in particular with the appointment of judges, but he holds a seat in the cabinet and he is responsible for overseeing his own government department and execution function. This mix of powers has led to criticisms that the Chancellor may be politically biased in his decision. Further, if he appoints judges substantially from his own political party, it does not seem feasible that they too will be apolitical. You see, a further criticism of the appointment of judges is that there's lack of variety in background, age, ethnic origin, and sex. Harris comments we should not be surprised to discover that judges tend to have extremely homogeneous backgrounds and educational patterns. This statement clearly indicates that judges are not able to fully grasp the reality beyond their own social class or mindset. The lack of female judges has led to criticism that the attitude of judges to women are outdated. There isn't in line with the concept of a fair trial or independent or impartial judge. Contrast to this, the appointment of magistrate who are considered from all walks of life are to reflect the diversity of occupations, backgrounds, religion, ethnic groups, and gender. This is in order to see that the bench is broadly balance. I mean, this statement was given by, Lord Chancellor Department book in 1988. Although they're not legally qualified, they are surely more in touch with the people. If if reconsidering the appointment of judges, this is worth taking into account. The next segment is in this next segment, we can also talk about that there are clearly many criticisms of the current appointment of judges. And I think that in line with the rule of law, the right to a fair trial and the principle that the judiciary should be independent. The system of appointment needs to be reviewed. Although judges are appointed on merit, it's hard to rule out possible political bias both in their appointment and in their attitudes. It also would seem that a broader range of people appointed would result in a judiciary that is more in touch with the needs of today's ever changing society. Now we have come to the conclusion part of this lecture. So, as you can see, that in conclusion, if we talk about the style of Bacon, he uses a rich vocabulary. His style is the man himself, and he is also known for his practical wisdom. So, I'm just summing up what we have discussed so far. You see, Bacon's rich vocabulary, numerous quotations, modern sentences, wonderful paragraphs, marvelous use of figures of speech, strength, clarity, precision, and so on make his style the most effective. Once Buffon says, style is the man himself. Longinus says, evaluation of style is the echo of great soul. If we just examine or if we just minutely analyze all these statements, we can say that all these statements show his essentially mean and benefit seeking attitude, even in the matters of heart. So, in a nutshell, we can say that this is the end of this presentation. In a nutshell, we can say that Bacon's essays are a handbook of practical wisdom, enriched with maxims which are very useful and helpful for worldly wisdom and success. So, this is the end of my lecture. Students, please go through the essay, and if you find any difficulty anywhere, you just write to me on my email ID. I'll get back to you. Thank you very much.